Good afternoon, ladies. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Yeah, hanging in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to see you, ladies. You guys are always a brightness to my day. So thank you for being here and doing this. This is awesome.
It's good seeing you too, Kathy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Should we talk about the beauty of imperfection? Since we're all perfect, right? I know I'm perfect.
She's not perfect. I'm not perfect.
I'm very happy for you.
Yeah.
Totally not perfect.
Well, yeah.
I might be perfect in laughing at myself, but making fun of myself, no. I like to make fun of things. But anyway, there is some truth, I think, to our expectations we've talked about our expectations and a lot of stuff in the past, but let's just talk about the beauty of quilting, the beauty of hobbies, the beauty of the sunshine outside with the Canadian fire smoke in the background.
I'm on the opposite side of the country to that. So
yeah.
We don't have that issue right here.
Oh man, we've had beautiful sunsets. That's all I'm saying. So the imperfect of the fires has brought beautiful sunsets to our part of the world.
They do beautiful sunsets. We lived in Tucson for a while, and we'd have fires up on the mountains around the bowl, and the sunsets are incredible.
Right.
Well, the sunsets are incredible.
I think it's pretty devastating to the people that are out there, though. So
yes, very.
Oh
much
yeah,
so. Yeah.
So
No.
yeah, because you can't get away from fire. That's the bad thing about it.
Yeah.
Where we used to live, it was amazing in Colorado Springs. It went straight up almost to the Air Force Academy. It went all down that whole mountain.
Yeah.
And then the next year, the other side of I-25 got it. So the whole city has been decimated several times over. And yeah, totally get that. It's not that way, but no.
Yeah, they come down into the bowl at times. I mean, and you would think that it would not be a common occurrence, but especially in places that are arid, it's a very common occurrence. So yeah,
Mother Nature's a powerful being.
Yeah,
right. She's pretty much a beast. Right now we're in a drought, so that's not going to be a good growing season. So expect corn products to be a little bit higher next year, I think.
Yeah. Well, and you think about it, I mean, no matter where you live, you've got something in your area that's an equalizer, right?
Uh-huh.
So, fires in some parts of the US, in my area, it's more like hurricanes, tornadoes where Kathy lives. You have, I mean, your winters are unreal, Tracy. So every place has its pros and cons, right?
Right. But it has its beauty in the imperfections, right? So
yeah.
What are your guys' when somebody brings you a quilt, and they say, oh, don't look at the points or don't look at this, do you try to talk about the positives?
I don't let them. I'm not interested in their points that don't match. And they all do it. They open it up and they want to start picking it apart. And I'm not a quilt judge. I'm not judging anything. That's not my job. So
it's going to look completely different once we get it quilted. Let's not freak out about it until it's quilted.
Absolutely. Right. But I wonder if people do that, and I know I'm guilty of it too. We're too self-critical, and I think sometimes it's easier because when you take something in, I remember I took a drawing class once years ago. And it was a big class. I didn't know anybody. And we had to draw. You had to choose what you wanted to draw first, right? And I chose, I was going to draw a vase with a stargazer lily in it. I can't remember how I came up with that. I did anyways. So we all drew our thing. I don't know how long we had or whatever. And then after, we were then told that we had to get up, show the whole class our drawing, and explain why we drew that. Oh, that's what it was. We had to draw something that we would teach to a beginner.
Oh.
So but she didn't tell us until after. And I don't know if it made a difference to anybody else. I'm just talking my experience. She did not tell us that when we were finished this exercise, that we were going to have to get up in front of the class, show everyone our drawing, and explain why we chose that particular thing to draw and why we chose that to teach to a beginner. And she picked me first. I swear to you. I mean, people think, people have this, I don't know. People seem to think that I'm this outgoing, extroverted, happy person. I would have eaten glass if that had been an option. So I got up in front of all these people and I had to show them something I had drawn. That I said afterwards, I could not have been completely naked standing there and not felt more uncomfortable.
Right.
It was horrible. It took me right back to my childhood where you put up your hand in class and you answer the question wrong and everybody laughs at you. Like that feeling of shame and being looked at and being judged and all those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was pretty deep. I didn't mean to go that deep. But I think when you bring in something that you've handmade and you're handing it off to somebody, I think we automatically want to point out all the stuff that we know is wrong with it so that the other person, it's like it's a self-defense mechanism, right? Well, if I point out all the stuff I already know is wrong with it, then maybe they won't comment or maybe they won't judge me. It's hard to put yourself out there like that, especially when it's artistic things.
Right.
You do. It makes you feel vulnerable. And for somebody to bring me a quilt, especially new people are the,
right.
I say the worst, and I don't mean that, but I mean, new people are, they come in talking about how awful it is or how not flat or how not right it is. And I'm like, okay, stop talking. Let's have a look. And it's beautiful. My first quilts didn't have nice points either. But my daughter slept under that quilt for years and loved it and it kept her warm. Who cares that my points didn't line up? Right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's my 2 cents.
Right. I feel, well, we were talking about this earlier too, if you do free motion quilting, for sure it's not going to be it's going to be not going to be perfect. To the other people, it looks perfect, but to me, it does not, right? Computers can look perfect-ish, but the fabric moves, so there might be some issues with computer work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I take exceptions to computers being perfect. The design may be perfect if it's quilted by itself and it's not on a quilt, but there's going to be some variation to the quilt top. So even then, I mean, you're going to have a little bit of distortion on that design as you're quilting it. I mean, it can look awesome. Don't get me wrong. But it's not perfect. I think the whole idea that we have to be perfect and what we do has to be perfect is unrealistic. And I think that it is a pitfall that especially a lot of computer quilters fall into when they first get their computers, that they need to be able to make this perfect because it's on a computer. Yeah, I'm not sure why my thing keeps going out like that. Sorry about that.
You're fine.
Okay.
But you need to be able to look at it from 6 feet away and have it look good. It may not look perfect when you're looking right up on top of it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I pick a lot of stuff out. It's not like I don't pick stuff out, but I am very judicious about what I pick out anymore. We will mark it. We put orange tape across it when it's on the frame and keep going. And then, pull it off the frame and then look at it. If it needs to be picked out, then we pick it out. Right. But we try really hard not to pick out on the frame if it is not a tension issue. If it's a tension issue, that's an entire different
Oh,
situation.
that's a different situation. Yeah.
Right. But like, so machine's going along and it kind of, decides it's going to bump on something. And typically what will happen is machine goes on, is going, and we haven't cleaned our rails well. Right. And it hits something on the rails, which, yeah, that happens. Yeah, everyone's laughing at me. It happens. So
I put a sign on my Lucy the other day to remind myself. I put a sign on her nose, and it says, "Please clean my wheels."
Please clean my wheels.
So I
right?
remember the next morning.
Yeah. So we clean the wheels at that point when we realize we have an issue, and then we keep going. And then we take it off the frame and look at that one line that may have done this a little bit. Can I see it from 6 feet? Is it noticeable? Do I need to pick it out? If it doesn't jump off of that quilt top, it doesn't come out of the quilt. It's not
and you're talking about computers. You're talking
computerized.
About
well, even it's the same thing if I'm free motion quilting. Well, I'm going to have a lot more on a free motion quilt that is not going to be perfect than I'm going to on a computerized system, right? Because by definition, free motion quilting is organic. So, yeah, I mean, if you are free motion quilting, you need to get over the perfection situation. It is just not part of free motion quilting. It needs to be organic. It needs to be smooth, right? And you need to be relaxed. And if you're trying to be perfect all the time, you're fighting what you really need to be, which is, relaxed and more artistic, right? With a computer,
loose grip.
Loose grip. I mean, like, people. Don't, yeah.
Right.
But, computerized, people really expect perfection when they're using a computer. And I have heard free motion quilters say, if you want perfection, go buy a computer. If I want a realistic cow, I need to go buy a computer, right? Because it can draw things that I personally can't draw. But as far as it being completely perfect, that is not a realistic expectation.
It is going to definitely be more consistent, potentially more consistent. And also, too, we need to look at our work that we're doing as quilters, as piecers. It's a one of a kind. Even if it's the same pattern as my next door neighbor. I mean, I sell kits here at the store. If 3 people buy the same kit, that does not mean it's going to end up the same, because they can have different batting choices, quilting choices, binding choices, the way they piece choices, the way they move differently. Yes. Yeah. It's that we need to get over this, I think, this word perfection and get on to it's a one of a kind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And give yourself time to grow as well and get those skills. I think we've had this conversation before, actually, just about cutting yourself some slack and not expecting perfection. Yeah. And by that I mean, have it be super, super good right from the gate. Babies don't pop out and start walking. Like, you would never teach a child how to do something and expect them to get it right the very first time. We have patience with little people. We have patience with our animals. Mm-hmm. We don't have patience. We never have patience with ourselves as adults anyways.
I also feel as I get older in my generations, like I don't want to go back to I look at my daughters who are 16. I said, there's no way I'm ever going back to 16. I love you very much. I hope your 16-year-old year is awesome and phenomenal, and we're going to work on making it amazing. I don't ever want to go back. But I think there's some more comfort with myself, and there's probably more comfort with our quilting skills as we get into the journey a little bit more, right? And we all have that. All of us are guilty of all feeling inadequate, getting frustrated. I mean, that's an amazing thing. But the beauty of our imperfections is what we should enjoy. What's the word I'm looking for? Enjoy, take special note of, try to enjoy that moment. And that's what I mean more with my generations as I get older. Like the moments mean something different now than they used to. Right?
Yeah.
And it's an interesting quilting journey. I think part of that in my quilting journey has just been kind of fun to watch. I like kind of looking at my mistakes and saying, they're not really mistakes. Right? What about you guys? Do you look back sometimes?
Well, I mean, you learn something every quilt you do. Like, so you're learning stuff the entire time you're doing this. I am not the same quilter that I was in 2008 when I bought my first long arm.
Right.
And I don't want to be that girl again. I don't. I would like to be doing a lot more free motion quilting than I'm doing. Right. I miss that part of what I did. But as far as the skills that I had as a free motion quilter, I've built those over, a long period of time. And I like that I can do lots of different things now. I actually like my computer. I didn't really want one when I bought it. I joke about the realistic cow that came down from a conversation with a client who didn't want a cartoon cow, which I could have drawn for her. She wanted one that looked real. And I'm like, I don't even know if I could buy a panto, but I think you should go talk to a computer quilter. Right. I think you learn from everything you do. And I think you have to let yourself evolve and understand that you may not like some of the things you quilt to start out with. That doesn't mean that other people won't. I mean, I've given quilts back to clients that I wasn't happy with, and they've loved them. Right. So that's important to remember, that if you're doing if you're doing someone else's vision, you may not be happy with it.
Right.
So
I did have a new quilter yesterday that I had to call. And then again, this is just education of staff. And sometimes I really feel, do you guys really feel like the quilt talks to you when you put when they bring it in and then I put it back on the long arm? Have you actually, well, Tracy, you do different than Angela and I, but I have the customer pick out the pantograph. Brand new customer, applique circles. I think they were peaches. I think they look like peaches, right? And she wanted this really tight flower design on there. And granted, she goes, I called her and I said, so I'd be no disrespect, but I think what we need to do is have a bigger pantograph. I have a bigger flower. I think that will be a much better fit for your quilt and help with the things. And she goes, well, I'm a new quilter. And I'm like, perfect. This is going to be perfect for that new kind of quilting experience. And we're going to make it look fabulous. We're going to make it that we're going to do this journey together and it's going to be fabulous. So it is that was a hard conversation. I mean, that was a hard one. I don't want to call the customer and say, you picked out the wrong pantograph.
So I took a quilt in, pretty early in my career that had a lot of white space on it, and the person wanted feathers on it.
I know you love feathers.
Well, I wasn't doing feathers at that point. I didn't do feathers the first 4 years I had a long arm. I didn't like my feathers, so I didn't quilt on them. But this particular quilt, they gave it to me and they said, when you're ready for feathers, I want feathers on this. And so I took the quilt in, because what do you do? When she's your mother, you do stuff like that. Honesty comes out.
Her mom.
It was my mom's quilt. Yes, it's a blue and yellow quilt with flowers, and it's kind of like a log cabin. It had a lot of white space on it, right? So like half the quilt was white. And she wanted feathers in the white part. She told me flat out what she wanted. So I had it for a long time, like 4 years, and I had done a couple feathered quilts for customers at that point, and I loaded it on the frame and I'm getting ready to feather it because that's what she wanted. And I picked up the phone and went, I finally figured out what's up with this quilt and why I can't feather it. And she said, why? I was like, because the quilt's telling me it wants leaves. It doesn't want feathers. At which point she's like, just quilt the way you want to, Angela. You don't have to put feathers on it just because I said that. I was like, well, I kind of do because it's your quilt and you're paying me, right? So she goes, you can put leaves on it. So I quilted the quilt and I mailed it home, right? And she took it out of the box and she cried and she goes, it's exactly what it needed.
Awesome.
You have to trust yourself sometimes, right?
Yes.
I
Yes.
thought I wasn't quilting that quilt because I wasn't ready to do feathers. That quilt was telling me I don't want feathers on it. Like, and I do really pretty leaves, right? So it's not like I was taking a cop out on it. You know, that's one of the things, surprisingly, when I was free motion quilting, I did lots of leaves. Like people would come in and ask me to put leaves on their quilts. Because they're pretty, right? And I understand that. I'm not known
a lot
for
of
my
the fabrics that people use too are like their
floral.
background prints, or they're floral and they're leafy, or they've got
Mhm.
little my
Vine.
friend Sharon called them ditzy prints. I don't know, she just always called them ditzy prints, like the little calico with the little things.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Leaves are popular. People like leaves.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that would be, if you were looking for something to learn how to free motion quilt that's really forgiving, that can go on almost anything, I would tell you to start learning how to draw leaves and find a leaf all over that you feel comfortable doing, that feels like second nature to you, and
Mhm.
market that, right? Because almost, I would say probably 75% of quilts have leaves in them somewhere on them.
Mhm.
So
And
you can get away with it.
leaves
And
are
they can look just as formal as feathers if you do them well.
Oh, yes, they can.
So
It's an arc or an S curve,
yeah.
or both. That's all they are. Don't get hung up on leaves, like the word leaf, the
Nope.
picture leaf. They're very simple shapes. So when you put them together, they create all kinds of beautiful things.
Mm-hmm.
So back
And-
up the bus. Think
Yep.
about the shape, not what's the word?
not the whole
shapes that
motif.
make the shapes that make the design, rather than overthinking the design. Just look at the shape that makes that full shape.
Yeah. And I put a lot of like tendrils and stuff in it that gives it movement.
Yep.
And that's another trick though, right? Because I have this space over here that needs big, it needs something. And I don't really want to go in there with a leaf by itself. It's not big enough for 2 or 3 leaves. So you put a tendril in there and keep going, right? Just
Mhm.
curl up and repeat back, right? So it's an easy design that is very, very effective. Once again, I mean, but they're not perfect. I mean, trust me, I mess up all the time. Every once in a while, I'll go in there and throw a flower in there, not mean to. Oops, keep going.
Walk through the woods.
Right.
Leaves are all different shapes. You can have 45 maple leaves and line them all up.
They're not
all
the same.
exactly the same. They're generally alike, but they're not all exactly the same.
Exactly.
They're not the same size.
Organically imperfect.
Mm-hmm. Which
So I did.
in itself makes it perfect. Imperfection is perfect.
Right.
Well,
Imperfection is perfect. So that's just what we need to, I feel as quilters need to encourage people out there to take a step back in, breathe, and look at all of the beauty that they just created.
Yeah. It's
And
about the texture.
Right. Right. And that's just such a perfect thing when we're talking about free motion quilting, or even the computer quilting. When we're talking about everything gets down to a shape, not the whole, right? Everybody tends to look at the whole. If you talk to the quilter who does it, like you just did, Tracy, I think we talk about, well, there's our S curves and here's our arcs, here's our lines,
And that's how I teach. I teach basic shapes that you build on to create awesome things.
Yep.
Yeah. Just break it down.
Right. Because it's all about the little. And yeah, I find that, because again, it can be so overwhelming if you look at a quilt and say, well, I really want to do these kind of feathers. Well, that's overwhelming at first. Look how long it takes.
Sketchbook. Start at the beginning. Draw. You'll get
Page
it.
1.
And keep the sketchbooks. Keep them, because a month, 2 months, 6 months, 5 years down the road, you're going to look back at those sketchbooks and you're going to see just how amazing your skills have improved and how much more creative you've gotten over time. Because every little thing that you conquer and you get better at, it branches you out and you get more creative and you add more things and you make things bigger.
Well, you'll also see motifs that you were doing 5 years ago that you're not doing now that could be perfect for the project that you're about to start.
Get your own ideas. Be your own inspiration. Be your own inspiration.
There you go. Put that on a t-shirt, Kathy.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we need to be in this world of where I feel I walk outside and I have all my armor on because you get this negative this and you get your negative this and you don't excel here and you don't do this and you don't do this. And especially I feel even more like as a business owner, sometimes I struggle with customers and being a small business. I'm not the big box quilt store or the fabric store, you know what I mean, kind of thing. And it gets kind of.
But would you want to be that?
No, I don't want. Oh, I don't want to be that. But it gets tired. I mean, I get a little bit defeated at the end of the day. Some days, if it's been like a negative filled day from folks, or if it's been a positive filled day, I get just the opposite. And so I have to always remind myself gently at the end of bad days, all of the good things that happen instead of all of the bad things that have happened.
Yeah.
So.
Hear you.
Yeah, well, and that's a hard thing to do in our society. Our society, it's just such a struggle on some of that stuff. And I just want people to quilt. I want them to be happy. And I want them to just enjoy the moment. You know, I love what Karen McTavish did say on one time I was watching one of her videos and says, don't fear the fear. It was like, wow, don't be afraid of the fear. Maybe that's how she put it. Don't be afraid of the fear. I just thought that was such a.
Lean into it.
Yes. Right.
Do it anyway.
Yeah. And if you're we get to talk to a lot of new longarmers. So we get to hear people have the same struggle and voice it in many, many different ways. Right. I had a friend once tell me that she was doing a dance with her long arm. And I asked her what she meant by that. She goes, well, I dance up to it. I look at what's on the long arm and I dance away. And I look up with it. I dance up and I look on my long arm and I dance away. It's like, okay, you need to change your dance. You need to walk up to your long arm and dance with your long arm, right?
Yeah.
It wants to dance with you.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, why are you not sharing the dance with it? And she just looked at me like, because I don't know what to quilt. I was like, needle down, turn the long arm on, and start quilting.
There you go. Amen. That's like amazing.
Yeah.
It is really, truly that simple.
It's like, and she just looked at me. I was like, they don't like sitting idle. They want to be running. I was like, so just change your dance. You know,
that's awesome.
Like, and she laughed at me. She goes, how do I do that? I was like, well, maybe change the music you're listening to something that's inspiring you and just quilt. Like, stop thinking about it. You're over, because I know when I first started, I overthought everything I did, like completely overthought
every single day.
I am so glad there was not a camera in my studio because it wasn't pretty. And even now, I mean, there's times that I can't decide what to do on something, right? But you got to start somewhere. You got to, either that or the quilts are never going to get done. And I started out the gate as a professional quilter. So I had quilts before I intended to have quilts, partially because my mother was with me when I bought my long arm, and she's obviously a piecer. So we cleared her house out of, I thought, every top she had in her house. I had a minivan, and my minivan was completely full to the ceiling in the back.
Wow.
With quilt tops. There were 75 quilt tops in the back. I could almost not get my luggage in the back of my minivan.
Holy.
So I still have
was
some of
a
those quilt
heavy-
tops.
That was a heavy load too, because fabric is not light.
Yeah, I still have some of them because she's still producing quilt tops. So like even I just got back from Houston. My mom and dad live with my sister outside of Houston now. And there was a quilt in my carry-on luggage going back to Houston because my sister this is my sister. I need a quilt next week. So I just finished it. So dad's overnighting it to you on Wednesday, right? So I got it Thursday. I took it in, loaded it on the frame. It was done Thursday afternoon. I didn't do it. Like someone at my store did for me. And I picked it up Friday morning, put it in my carry-on, and got on the plane Friday afternoon.
Wow.
That's
look at you.
pretty good customer service.
Hand delivered, brand new, just fresh off the long arm quilt. We even squared it up for her. It was ready to put the binding on.
Wow.
Yeah, she's a little
She
spoiled.
must be special.
She's a little spoiled. She's my big sister. She's the oldest, right? There's only the two of us, but she lets me know she's the princess. So
actually, you got extra sister love. You got extra sister points.
I did. Well, yeah. I mean, we're super close to begin with because we grew up all over the world. My dad was military. So we were the two people that were constant with each other, right? So we are super close to begin with, but she was hilarious. She said, I have a quilt that needs to be done this week. And I'm like, and the whole time I'm thinking,
no problem.
You have an ABQS rep that's really close to you. Let me see if she has availability.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So one other, I think, and you guys are in the same boat. I love being in the cheerleader for all of my renters. I got a lady in yesterday. She's like, this is the part that stresses me out the most. And I have to get these done. And I just pieced them yesterday and I just got their t-shirt quilts. So this lady was phenomenal. Got the t-shirt quilts a couple days before, already made the top, already quilted 2 of them, and took them home last night to bind them. I'm like, sweetheart, you are going to tell these people like this is not normal, right? Like you need to make sure that they don't
she needs
to yourself again because no.
But here's the thing: is she doing this as a business or for friends?
It was for a friend.
Okay, but here's so they're gonna have, if they have other kids or grandkids or nieces and nephews, they now have the expectation they can give her a quilt or t-shirts and get a quilt in a week.
No,
not a realistic expectation to set.
That's a one-off.
And that's exactly what I'd be telling them.
For sure.
And I won't be doing it again the next time. I need time.
Right. No, but she's in there. She's stressing. I could hear it in her voice a little bit. You know what I mean? But I love helping her get through all, and then she did call in a friend to come help her. So she could get done a little bit faster. And it was joy watching both of them work together and do this little long arm, like you said, the dance. And her to finish all of them. It was beautiful to see her finish quilt with all of its beautiful imperfections that turned out to be beautiful.
Yeah.
So I love being cheerleaders. How about you? Do you guys like being the cheerleaders?
It's one of the main reasons I do what I do.
Yeah. I think I make a really good cheerleader. Not high school rah-rah cheerleader. I didn't even try out for that. I knew better.
Me either.
Me either.
I love it when I can encourage somebody to try something that they're nervous of or afraid of or don't think they can do it. And I just keep gently. I mean, I'm not obnoxious with it, and it just thrills me when they get it and you get that. You see that look and you think,
yes,
see, told you. See,
told you you could do it.
Told you you could do it.
We knew you could do it all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the funny. They're like, I didn't think I could do this. We knew you could do it.
Right.
So I love when they have that moment, though. That is the best thing ever. I love seeing quilts that my students have done. to me, it is the best thing in the whole wide world to see them using those new skills, whatever skills they are. Right. So, yeah. And I still teach free motion quilting. People think that I am this one trick pony and I just do computerized quilting. I don't. I teach free motion quilting too.
Right. And guess what? Every single one of my customer quilts have been beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And in their own way, they have been.
Yes. That's what I think is.
They are.
That's what
even the ones that had interesting color choices in them. I mean,
right.
I have a couple customers that have very unique senses of colors. They put things together that I would never put together. But in the end, the quilts are beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Fabulous. I don't know. I just find that's what's exciting about this quilting world, because it's ever changing. Nothing is ever the same.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're all different. They're all individual, unique to each person's personality and likes and dislikes.
Right.
Do you have people who walk in and say, I want this quilted just like the picture?
I've had a little bit of that, yes.
And I look at them, I'm like, no, you don't. You think you do. The quilt is beautiful. I can understand why you're saying that. But we need to put some of you into this quilt.
Mm-hmm.
That's somebody else, right?
Right. It's right. It's I don't know. Like I said, this quilting world is just never ceases to amaze me. What walks in the store, what walks out of the store, what creativity people have. It's fabulous.
True.
And that long arm, because I find that when people come in, they sometimes when they're learning to do our rental program, that they're afraid of the machine. Right? Mm-hmm. Rightly so, not theirs. It's a big old beast. You're in a room full of, all these other people. Rightly so, like being totally nervous, right? I like to calm them down and say, you know what? This is just a straight stitch machine on wheels. No big deal. You got this.
Mm-hmm. Mechanically, it's probably the easiest machine that you've ever used.
Right.
I mean,
right. I don't know about you, but we have the store. I love when gentlemen, and especially we're right in the middle of our shop hop right now, and gentlemen are going around with their wives to this shop hop. It's like this magnet to watch them walk to the back, because we have the long arms in the back. So they walk through the fabric and they see this window, so they come to see it, and they see the machine, and it's like that fly to the light, and then, like they stand out in the front of the room and they're like getting zapped by watching this machinery move. It's so fun to kind of watch.
Well, I mean,
they are fun to watch.
They are pretty impressive when compared to your standard domestic machine that sits on the kitchen table or wherever. Right. You know what I mean? Like in size and structure and the amount of room they take up, and then they want to look at the frame and how it's, especially the engineers, they want to see how it's built and the materials it's made of. And
it's like my woodworking machine. Well, yes, it's a CNC machine, just like your woodworking machine. So yes. And now you can see why he needs it.
Without the computers, though, just the whole mechanism and how it all works, and it's impressive.
Yeah. It's still working on an X and Y axis. I mean, it's still there. This is no. I'm trying to think of how to word this, but no matter whether you're using a computer or your free motion quilting, you're still just plotting things on it. Mm-hmm. Right? Because it's always working on two axes, no matter how you're actually using the machine. Right. So whether it's computer driven or not, right? Works the same way every single time, which I think is cool.
And I've also heard the long arms, like I've always been a little bit afraid of our little machines to actually help customers. I was afraid at first. And then this great lady, Alba, who now works for Juki, came out and was talking to us. And at the time she worked for Janome, and she was talking to us about Well, Kathy, all that is an embroidery machine. She just happens to have a very big hoop. And as soon as she said that, because I'm like, I can talk those long arms all day long. You give me that long arm, I will just puke information all over you. But you get that little machine, and I'm like, She goes, it's just an embroidery. I mean, the embroidery, it's just a big embroidery machine, just big, gigantic hoop. Oh, okay.
Mhm.
It was
That's
interesting,
funny.
right?
I've taken classes with Alba.
Isn't she? She's adorable.
She's cutie. She's
She's coming back out in September to our store. I'm so excited. This time as a Juki person, we got to keep her. I felt really bad when I got the notification one day that Alba left, and we're like, oh, I'm so sad.
I took a mastery machine for my 15,000 with her.
Yes. And then I get this notification that Alba joined Juki, and I'm like, yay! I went from losing Alba to still having Alba. There's some amazing teachers out in this world of quilting too. I love
There
it.
are.
Learn from all kinds of people. That's the other piece of advice I give. All kinds of people.
Yeah, everybody's style is different. So people
Agreed.
gravitate to depending on the style of quilting that you like.
Well, and especially with long arm quilting, if you're doing free motion quilting, it doesn't really matter what machine somebody owns.
Right.
It's their choice. It's what they like to drive.
Mhm.
If they're teaching free motion quilting, you should be able to use that on any machine.
Oh, for sure.
Damn.
Yeah.
Now, I will say one of the reasons I don't like hands-on classes for free motion quilting on long arms is because I have to use other machines.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
think
I'm
it
used to
limits the
mine.
number of people too. It limits the number. I feel it limitations sometimes because you can only have one or two or maybe three people on a machine.
But I think it actually goes back to what Tracy said at the beginning of this talk, that when I'm taking a class and I'm learning how to do free motion quilting, they want me to, stand up on a brand of machine that I don't use, that's probably heavier than mine because most of them are. And they want me to quilt, and it's not going to be my normal quilting because I'm quilting in their style, which I haven't learned yet. And I'm going to feel very goofy footed and not sure of myself. Right. So all those feelings that Tracy's talking about feeling inadequate and going back to elementary school and how I felt when the teacher made me do things in class, that's how I feel during free motion quilting hands-on classes. I would much rather be in a class where I have a sketchbook.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can go and practice on my own machine in quiet with nobody watching me and feel perfectly confident in anything I'm doing. If I'm trying to do it in front of others and like have the teacher just stop and really watch me, drives me nuts. Like I don't enjoy it at all.
And I bet,
especially if you don't own that brand of machine, and it doesn't matter what brand or who you're taking the class from. But if you're taking a class that is hands-on, and for those of you who don't understand that, hands-on just means that you're working on the machines during the class. The boot camp that I used to teach was a hands-on class, but it was a duo class. So it was demo draw. So they're drawing for most of the time, but they're also all assigned 2 people per machine, right? I don't like teaching that way. I would rather have people draw for 2 days. I can teach you everything, not everything you need to know, but everything that I want to teach you, you don't need to stand at my machine for, especially if you own a different brand. Because instead of focusing what I'm trying to teach you, you're trying to remember, I mean, we only have toggle switches, so it's not hard to remember the buttons, but the buttons are in a different place than your machine. The handles sit differently. The machine, the frame is a different height. It's a different weight.
The handles may move.
So many different things, when honestly, if you just came and draw, and I'll demo, if somebody wants to grab the reins and give it a go, absolutely. But you're going to learn more by drawing and letting me come around and help you draw. If I watch you draw, I can tell you where you're going. in some cases, you know, if they're having a hard time with something and they're like, I don't know, it started out okay. If I can see what they're drawing, I can fix that and help them on their sketchbook. Then take it home and play at home with a machine that you're comfortable with and that you know inside and out. And you're not spending, or not wasting, but you're not using your energy in class to get used to a machine that you're never going to drive again. Because that's not the one you have.
Right. It's like using somebody else's golf clubs or getting into the car. Yeah, I was getting in the car seat after my husband, who's 6'7", and then I can see right here up on the dashboard. Like, you know, I gotta move it up a little bit, move it closer, and get it to me.
Yeah, because all the skills. I mean, the only exception to that is ruler work, because with rulers, you do have to be.
Well, yes, my ruler works classes are always hands-on. Even at my machine, we start out talking about the rulers, using spacers and stuff to draw on craft. You know, I put paper down on my tables when I have classes.
Right.
So some of that stuff we start out with, not on the long arms, but we always end up moving to the long arms, because with rulers, you need to understand how to hold that ruler.
Yeah.
That being said, typically for my ruler classes, most of the time, it's going to be APQS owners, because it's going to be people that are in like my play days and stuff like that are taking those classes.
Right.
I've had other people with other brands, but I mean, I don't know what their bases are like. I don't know what their rulers are like. I don't know what their hopping foot's like, right? There's some variation that can happen with all of those. Just like, you know, with APQS machines, I know that at a certain time, we switched to 1/4 inch feet. And before that, our feet were not 1/4 inch, right? So if you're trying to get a 1/4 inch repeat on something and you have a 3/8 inch foot, you need to know that, right? So it's something about the APQS line that I don't know that history on other long arms. So I have to actually ask a lot more questions, and have them measure stuff when they get back to their house and make sure that things really are quilting the way they expect them to quilt, right? That being said, the physical use of the ruler should be the same, right?
Yeah.
As long as their base is steady, they're, you know,
Right.
There's just a little more questions that you end up asking, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we just went in kind of like, we rabbit hole this way, we rabbit hole that way. We talked about some new stuff, some old stuff. I think it's good sometimes just reiterating, embrace the imperfections of your beautiful quilting.
Yeah.
For
Right.
sure.
For sure.
Be patient. Be patient with yourself.
Yes.
Most definitely.
Well, we're at a place we probably should take a break and say we will see you next week. Give a thumbs up, like, give a comment, follow the Quilting Academy, Whirls and Swirls, Thread Waggle Quilting, and Fabric Bash to see all kinds of great content coming from all of us. Different content, excuse me. Anything else you two beautiful ladies would like to add?
You covered it. All good.
You are fabulous, ladies. Thank you for spending the afternoon.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.